September 10th, 1944. Granville, France. The coastal villa that serves as Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force sits on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Inside, General Dwight D. Eisenhower is bent over a table covered in logistics charts. His Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith, stands beside him. The coffee's gone cold. The maps tell a brutal story. Patton's Third Army sitting idle in Lorraine, tanks empty. Hodges' First Army rationing gasoline in Belgium. Every red line on the map represents a supply convoy struggling to keep up with armies that broke out of Normandy and raced across France faster than anyone planned. Then the phone rings. Smith picks it up, listens. His face changes. He covers the receiver. "Sir, it's Field Marshal Montgomery." Eisenhower takes the phone. "Monty, what can I do for you?" What he hears makes him grip the receiver tighter. Smith watches Eisenhower's jaw clench, watches him close his eyes for a moment. When Eisenhower speaks again, his voice is careful, controlled. "Say that again, please." Montgomery repeats it. Britain's most famous general, Victor of El Alamein, the man who broke Rommel, has just delivered an ultimatum to the Supreme Commander of Allied forces in Europe. Give him 100% of Allied supplies. Everything currently going to divert it all to 21st Army Group. Or he resigns. Eisenhower's face goes white. If you want to see how one phone call nearly destroyed the Allied coalition and changed the course of World War II, hit that subscribe button right now and ring the bell for WWII War Files. We bring you the untold stories, the real conversations, the moments that decided history. Let's go. Eisenhower puts Montgomery on hold, turns to Smith. His voice is quiet, but there's steel underneath. "Bedell, tell me Monty just said he wants us to ground Patton and Hodges completely?" Smith nods. He said, "Halt all operations not under 21st Army Group command." Yes, sir, that's what he means. Eisenhower pulls the logistics map closer. The numbers are right there. Red Ball Express trucks running 24/7 from Normandy beaches to the front. A 400-mile round trip. Current allocation: Patton's Third Army gets 400 tons of supplies per day. Hodges' First Army gets 400 tons. Montgomery's 21st Army Group already gets 750 tons, the most of any command. Montgomery isn't asking for more. He's demanding Eisenhower halt two entire American armies. Armies currently 60 miles from the German border, and redirect their complete supply allocation exclusively to him. That's 800 tons daily from the Americans, plus his existing 750 total. Over 1,200 tons per day to one army group. Eisenhower does the math out loud. Total Allied supply capacity from Normandy ports, 1,500 tons per day. Monty wants 1,200. That leaves 300 tons for Patton, Hodges, Paris, which needs 300 just to feed civilians, Devers' 6th Army Group down south, and all supply line maintenance. He looks up at Smith. "That's not a supply plan. That's shutting down 3/4 of our front." Smith's voice is carefully neutral. "Sir, he believes concentrating resources on one thrust into Germany will end the war by Christmas. And if it fails?" Eisenhower's voice rises slightly. "Then we've got 3 grounded armies, an exposed flank 200 miles long, and the Germans concentrated on one axis. This is..." He stops, takes a breath, picks the phone back up. "Monty, I need to understand this clearly. You're asking me to halt 3rd and 1st armies completely and give you their supplies for a single operation into Germany." Montgomery's voice comes through. Crisp British accent. "Not asking, Ike. Telling you what's necessary. We have a chance to end this war before winter. One concentrated blow while the Germans are disorganized. But only if we're bold enough to take it. We've been over this," Eisenhower says. "The broad front strategy isn't just my preference. It's the combined chiefs. We advance on multiple axes. Keep pressure on the whole German front. Directives written before we broke out of Normandy." Montgomery counters. "The situation has changed. My intelligence says the Germans are beaten. One corps can reach Berlin before they recover, but I need the supplies. All of them, now." Eisenhower's voice hardens. "And if your single thrust fails, then what do I tell Bradley? What do I tell Patton? Their men sit idle while one army group gets everything? More risky than a slow advance that gives Hitler time to rebuild his armies?" Montgomery's tone is sharp now. "Ike, this is about winning the war, not about keeping everyone happy." There's a long silence. Eisenhower closes his eyes. "Monty, I can't do it. I can't halt 3 American armies for one operation. This is still a coalition. Montgomery's voice goes cold, formal. Then I'm afraid I must tell you, Ike, with great regret, that if you won't concentrate resources for a decisive operation, I'll have no choice but to tender my resignation to the Prime Minister. The silence that follows is absolute. Smith watches Eisenhower's knuckles turn white on the phone. You're serious? Entirely. Eisenhower's voice is quiet now, dangerous. I'll call you back. He hangs up, stands there for a moment, then turns to Smith. Get me Bradley, then get me Marshall in Washington. This just became a political crisis. But Montgomery wasn't bluffing. He'd already drafted his resignation letter, and he was about to take this straight to Winston Churchill. Within 2 hours, Montgomery's cable reaches London. He doesn't contact the British Chiefs of Staff through proper channels. He goes straight to 10 Downing Street to Churchill himself. The message is diplomatically worded, but the meaning is clear. Eisenhower's broad front strategy is squandering the victory Montgomery won in Normandy. A concentrated thrust could end the war in weeks. But the Americans timid. Churchill reads it in his office. His private secretary, John Colville, records his reaction in his diary. The Prime Minister put down the cable and said, Monty has just lit a powder keg. By afternoon, British newspapers, fed leaks from Montgomery's staff, begin questioning American command. The headlines don't name Eisenhower directly, but the implications are there. Missed opportunities in France. Old strategy or cautious crawl. One editorial asks whether excessive caution is allowing Germany time to regroup. The political damage is instantaneous. 3,000 miles away, Eisenhower's emergency call reaches General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff of the United States Army, at the War Department in Washington. It's 9 a.m. East Coast time. Marshall listens without interrupting as Eisenhower explains the situation. Montgomery demanding total supply priority. Montgomery threatening resignation. Montgomery going to Churchill. Marshall's response is ice cold. If Montgomery resigns, let him. But if you yield to this blackmail, you'll face a revolt from every American general in theater. Patton will go public. Bradley will request relief. Ike, this coalition will collapse. There's a pause. Then Marshall's voice gets even harder. Eisenhower, if you need to relieve Montgomery of command, I will support you to the president. But we will not allow British political pressure to dictate American operational sacrifice. Is that clear? Yes, sir. You have full authority, use it. But Montgomery wasn't done. He was about to propose something even more shocking. Something that would make Eisenhower consider the unthinkable. September 11th, 1944, the next morning. General Omar Bradley, commander of 12th Army Group, which includes both Patton's 3rd Army and Hodges's 1st Army, arrives at Eisenhower's headquarters, unannounced. He's driven through the night from his command post. He's received word through staff channels about Montgomery's ultimatum. Bradley is normally calm, diplomatic. Patient, not today. He walks into Eisenhower's office without ceremony. Ike, if you ground 1st and 3rd Armies to feed Monty's ego, I'm asking for relief. Eisenhower looks up, surprised. Brad, I mean it. Bradley's voice is flat, final. I won't tell Courtney Hodges his men accomplished nothing while Montgomery gets a parade to Berlin. And I sure as hell won't face George Patton and explain why his tanks sit empty so Montgomery can take credit for winning the war. Brad, I'm not. Bradley leans on the desk. You pick Monty over us, I'm done, and you'll lose every American field commander. This isn't about supplies, it's about who commands this army, you or Montgomery. Eisenhower meets his eyes. I'm not giving Montgomery total supply priority. Then what are you giving him?
I don't know yet.
Churchill's flying in tomorrow. This is above our pay grade now. Bradley straightens. Whatever you decide, Ike, remember this. Patton and I have 800,000 men between us. They fought from Normandy to the German border. You ground them for Monty's theory about ending the war by Christmas. You better be damn sure it works. Because if it doesn't, we'll have lost 2 months, 3 armies worth of momentum, and the confidence of every American soldier in Europe. He walks out. Eisenhower sits alone. The political pressure from London is building. Marshall's given him authority, but also a warning. Don't break the American armies for British prestige. Bradley just threatened to resign. And Montgomery's still out there, waiting for an answer, resignation letter ready. And in London, Churchill was reading Montgomery's next cable. What it said would force the Prime Minister to fly to France personally. September 12, 1944. A second memorandum arrives from Montgomery. Eisenhower opens it, expecting another argument about supplies. Montgomery is now demanding that Eisenhower appoint a single ground force commander for all Allied armies in Northwest Europe, with full operational authority over Bradley, Patton, Hodges, everyone, and the memorandum strongly implies that commander should be Montgomery himself. Read that again. Montgomery wants Eisenhower to create a new position above all Army Group commanders, give that position complete operational control of the land battle, and hand it to him. Eisenhower would retain only strategic coordination, policy, politics, not operations. Eisenhower reads it twice, puts it down, looks at Smith. He wants me to fire myself. Smith says nothing. This isn't about supplies anymore. Montgomery is proposing an organizational revolution in the middle of a campaign. He's asking Eisenhower to surrender direct command of Allied ground forces and create a position which doesn't currently exist, to put himself between the Supreme Commander and the armies. Within hours, the British newspapers, still being fed information from Montgomery's staff, escalate their criticism. Now they're calling openly for experienced battlefield leadership of ground operations. The implication is clear. Eisenhower, who never commanded troops in combat before this war, should step aside for Montgomery. Victor of El Alamein. Churchill cables Eisenhower requesting an urgent meeting. The Prime Minister is caught between his most popular general and his most crucial ally. If he backs Montgomery and Eisenhower refuses, Roosevelt might question British commitment to coalition command. If he backs Eisenhower and Montgomery resigns, British public opinion will explode. Across the Channel, Patton gets wind of Montgomery's ground commander proposal through intelligence intercepts. His diary entry that night, later published, reads, "If Ike caves to that insufferable man and makes him ground commander, I'll resign and tell the press exactly why. I won't serve under Montgomery. I'd rather be a colonel under Bradley than a general under that pompous. The rest is unprintable." Even Montgomery's own staff officers are getting nervous. One of them, Major General Francis de Guingamp, Montgomery's chief of staff, will write in his post-war memoir that he approached Montgomery privately and said, "Sir, this may be going too far." Eisenhower has Washington's complete backing. Montgomery's response: Eisenhower meets with his deputy, British Air Chief Marshal Arthur Tedder, to get a British perspective. Tedder's response is blunt. "Arthur, I'm Supreme Commander. Montgomery is trying to reorganize Allied command structure to put himself between me and my armies. If I allow this, I'm not commanding anything. I'm a politician in a chateau." Tedder, who has no love for he's overreached, Ike. But you need Churchill to understand that before this in London, Churchill is having the same conversation with Field Marshal Alan Brooke, Chief of the Imperial General Staff and Montgomery's strongest supporter. "Alan, Monty is brilliant, but impossible. If we push this and Eisenhower resigns, Roosevelt will pull American support. We'll lose the war to save Montgomery's pride." Brooke, torn between loyalty to Montgomery and political reality, can only respond, "Prime Minister, Monty believes he's right." Believing you're right and being right are two different things. At Bradley's headquarters, Bradley and Patton meet privately. Bradley, "George, if Montgomery becomes ground commander, we're both asking for relief the same day." Patton, "I'll write the letter. You call the press conference." Because Montgomery had just sent Eisenhower a new message, and this time he wasn't just demanding supplies. September 14th, 1944. Winston Churchill's aircraft lands in France. The Prime Minister meets with Eisenhower privately at Chef headquarters. No aides, no transcripts, but what happens in that room will determine the future of the Allied command structure. Churchill later that evening will cable the War Cabinet in London with the result, "Eisenhower has my full support to maintain his command structure as constituted." But Churchill also asks Eisenhower for something in return. "Can you give Montgomery enough to attempt his northern operation? Something to show boldness? Something to satisfy British public opinion that we're not simply grinding forward slowly?" Eisenhower sees the political solution: approve Montgomery's Market Garden operation, the massive airborne assault into Holland that Montgomery's been proposing. Give him supply priority for that specific operation, but reject the permanent command change. Reject the total supply monopoly, a compromise. Montgomery gets his chance to prove his single thrust theory, but on a limited scale, with a deadline. And if it fails, the broad front strategy continues with no more challenges. Churchill agrees. It keeps Monty in the fight and gives him no grounds to resign. If Market Garden succeeds, he's proven his point. If it fails, he doesn't finish. Doesn't need to. After Churchill leaves, Eisenhower sits alone in his office. Tomorrow morning, he'll call Montgomery and deliver the verdict. The phone call that will either end this crisis or shatter the coalition entirely. He picks up a pen and begins drafting notes for what he'll say. It needs to be firm enough to end Montgomery's challenge, diplomatic enough to preserve the alliance, and clear enough that Montgomery understands there will be no more ultimatums. The next morning, September 15th, 1944, Eisenhower places the call. Montgomery's aide answers. Field Marshal Montgomery's headquarters. This is General Eisenhower. Put the Field Marshal on. 30 seconds later, Montgomery's voice comes through. Crisp, formal. Good morning, Ike. Monty, I've consulted with General Marshall and met with the Prime Minister yesterday. I'm calling to give you my decision. I'm listening. Eisenhower's voice is measured, but there's steel underneath. You're not getting total supply priority. You're not getting a ground commander position. The command structure stays as in I command. You command 21st Army Group. Bradley commands 12th Army Group. Silence on the line. Montgomery's voice, when it comes, is stiff. Then I must maintain my position, Ike. Without concentration of resources, we're losing our opportunity to end this. This is the moment. Eisenhower could back down, could offer another compromise, could let political pressure force his hand, but he doesn't. Then I'll accept it. Another silence, longer this time. But before you submit that letter to London, understand this. Eisenhower's voice is colder now. General Marshall has authorized me to relieve you if necessary. The Prime Minister has indicated he won't oppose maintaining current command arrangements. If you resign, I'll appoint General Miles Dempsey to command 21st Army Group and continue operations. The silence that follows is absolute. Montgomery, on the other end of the line, realizes the ground has shifted. He played his political card. Eisenhower just called the bluff. And Churchill sided with Eisenhower. Montgomery's voice, when it returns, has changed. The certainty is gone.
You'd
accept my resignation? Monty, you're one of the finest commanders in this war, but I'm not reorganizing Allied command under threat. I'm not halting 3 American armies for one operation, and I'm not allowing any subordinate, British or American, to dictate strategy through blackmail. Eisenhower pauses. Lets that sink in. So, yes, if you resign, I'll accept it. I'll relieve you with regret. And I'll continue the mission. 10 seconds of silence. Smith, standing next to Eisenhower, can hear his own heartbeat. Montgomery's voice comes back. Different tone now. Backing down. I see. Then, perhaps I was too forceful in my memorandum. Perhaps, if I may ask, what can you offer for the northern operation? I still believe we have an opportunity in Holland. Eisenhower's voice softened slightly. The compromise. I'll approve Market Garden. I'll give you supply priority for that operation specifically, enough to support 3 airborne divisions and XXX Corps advance. But Patton and Hodges continue their operations at reduced levels. And after Market Garden concludes, we return to balanced logistics across the front. He pauses. That's my final offer, Monty. Another pause. Montgomery is calculating. He's lost the battle for total control, but he's being offered one operation. One chance to prove his theory. It's not everything, he demanded, but it's something. Very well, Ike, I'll withdraw my resignation. And I'll make Market Garden succeed with what you can provide. This is it. The moment Eisenhower has been building toward. The line that will define this entire crisis. His voice is quiet but absolutely firm. Monty, you're a great general, one of the greatest. But this is my command. It was given to me by Roosevelt, Churchill, and the combined chiefs of staff. You don't negotiate for it. You don't threaten for it. And you sure as hell don't resign your way into it. Eisenhower lets that hang in the air for a moment. Now, are you going to command 21st Army Group? Or do I call General Dempsey? The silence is brief this time. I'll command, sir. Good. I'll have the operations order for Market Garden on your desk by this afternoon. We launch in 72 hours. Eisenhower hangs up, sits back in his chair. Smith is staring at him. Sir, you just faced down the British Empire's most famous general. I just saved the alliance. There's a difference. This wasn't just about supplies or strategy. Montgomery, The victor of El Alamein, the hero of Britain, the general who broke Rommel in the desert, had tried to leverage his prestige and British political pressure to effectively take operational control from Eisenhower. He assumed the coalition would bend rather than lose him. That Eisenhower would fold under political pressure. He was wrong on if Eisenhower called his bluff, backed by Marshall, backed, ultimately, by Churchill, and in doing so established an ironclad principle that would govern Allied operations for the rest of the war. Coalition unity commanded by American leadership, not British prestige politics. Montgomery never threatened resignation again. 3 days later, he launched Market Garden with the supplies Eisenhower provided, and it failed catastrophically. September 17, 1944, Operation Market Garden begins. 3 Allied airborne divisions, American 101st and 82nd, British 1st Airborne, drop into Holland to seize bridges across multiple rivers. XXX Corps, Montgomery's armored spearhead, races up a single highway to relieve them. The plan: bounce across the Rhine at Arnhem, outflank the entire German defensive line, and drive into the Ruhr industrial heartland. End the war by Christmas. It lasts 9 days. The British 1st Airborne Division lands at Arnhem, the bridge farthest north, and runs straight into 2 SS Panzer divisions refitting in the area. Intelligence missed them. The division is surrounded, cut off. XXX Corps can't reach them. The single highway becomes a killing ground. By September 26th, it's over. Of the 10,000 men from 1st Airborne who dropped into Arnhem, only 2,000 escaped back across the Rhine. 8,000 casualties. The bridge at Arnhem, the final objective, never taken. Total Allied casualties for Market Garden, 17,000 men, Americans, British, Polish, for an operation that failed to achieve any of its strategic objectives. The numbers tell the story. Montgomery's requested supply allocation, 1,200 tons per day, indefinitely for a general offensive into Germany. What he received for Market Garden, 1,000 tons per day for 2 weeks for a specific operation. Result: catastrophic failure at Arnhem. But here's what didn't happen. 3 American armies sitting idle while Montgomery rolled the dice on a single plan that failed anyway. Because while Market Garden was collapsing in Holland, the broad front strategy, the one Montgomery called timid, was working. Patton's Third Army, operating on reduced supplies, captured 37,000 German prisoners in Lorraine. Hodges's First Army liberated Luxembourg and pushed into Germany. Dever's Sixth Army Group cleared southern France. The broad front kept pressure on Germany across 400 miles of frontage. Hitler couldn't concentrate his reserves against any single thrust, couldn't rebuild his armies behind a quiet sector. The Allies ground forward, slowly, expensively, but inevitably. And the command structure held. This wasn't a staff meeting disagreement that got Montgomery genuinely threatened to resign, genuinely believed he should command all Allied ground forces, genuinely thought political pressure from London would force Eisenhower to yield. He tried to use his prestige as Britain's most famous general to reorganize Allied command structure in the middle of a campaign. Eisenhower said no, backed by Marshall, and ultimately backed by Churchill, who understood that saving Montgomery's pride wasn't worth breaking the alliance. When Eisenhower offered the compromise, approve Market Garden but maintain the command structure, Montgomery had a choice: accept it and stay in command, or resign and watch someone else lead 21st Army Group. He checked. The resignation letter, already drafted, went into a drawer and was never sent. After Market Garden failed, Churchill met privately with Field Marshal Brooke in London. Brooke's diary records the Prime Minister's words: Eisenhower was right. Monty would have led us to the same failure, but with Patton and Bradley's armies idle and furious, we'd have lost the alliance over a bad plan. Eisenhower, for his part, never publicly criticized Montgomery over the September crisis, never mentioned the resignation threat in his reports, never used it for political advantage. He preserved Montgomery's reputation, maintained the coalition, and continued the mission. That's coalition command, not finding the perfect plan, finding the plan that keeps the alliance together while defeating the enemy. Years later, after the war, Eisenhower was asked about the September 1944 crisis during an interview. His response, published in his memoirs, cuts to the heart of it. Careful, thorough, methodical. But he never fully grasped that supreme command of a coalition isn't about finding the perfect military plan. It's about finding the plan that keeps the alliance together while defeating the enemy. In September 1944, Monty's perfect plan would have fractured Allied unity irreparably. I'd rather take Berlin slowly with American and British armies side by side than race there alone and arrive to find the coalition in ruins behind me. The final irony? When Germany finally surrendered on May 8, 1945, it wasn't because of a single brilliant thrust to Berlin. It was because a dozen Allied armies, American, British, Canadian, Free French, Polish, ground Germany down on every front simultaneously. Eisenhower's broad front strategy, criticized, maligned, called timid, worked. Montgomery personally accepted the surrender of German forces in northern Germany, a proud moment, a fitting end to his command. Eisenhower was elsewhere that day. He was coordinating the surrender of German forces across the entire Western Front, from the North Sea to the Alps. Every army, every sector, every commander reporting to him. One man commanded an army, the other commanded the war. That's what the phone call on September 15, 1944 decided. Not just whether Montgomery got more supplies, whether any subordinate commander, no matter how famous, no matter how politically connected, could threaten, negotiate, or resign their way into control. Eisenhower's answer was no, and that answer held the alliance together long enough to win. If this story showed you a side of World War II history you've never seen before, do me a favor. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling me what you think, and subscribe to WWII War Files for more untold stories from the war that changed everything. This is the history they don't teach. These are the moments that decided the world we live in, and we're just getting started.